Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Nathan Guerra, and welcome to the Anzac Classic live here on Zwift Community Live. We are out for Volcano KOM After Party, so there's going to be a mountaintop finish today for 40 kilometers. Now, if you want to have a little bit of information on the Anzac Classic, it is in honor of the Anzac Day Ride. Every year on April 25th, Australia and New Zealand remember and honor all those brave soldiers who fought and died for their country during World War I. So that's what it's all about today. We've got hundreds and hundreds of riders jumping into the pens out here today. But instead of me carrying all of you guys through all of this racing out here in honor of this day for the lands down under, it makes a lot more sense to bring in a couple of commentators that are a lot more familiar on all that. So carrying us through this today is going to be Matthew Keenan and Pat Shaw. Welcome to the program. I'm going to throw it over to those boys as we're about to get started into the pens.
Thanks very much, Nathan. It is a significant day in both the history of Australia and New Zealand. I'm sure you'd agree, Pat. This is arguably the most significant day on the Australian calendar in many respects.
Well, yes, certainly. And I remember racing in South Korea. The Tour of South Korea used to be on in this particular time of the year. And we'd always have dinner with the Kiwis from the other teams in the race on the night of the 25th of April. So it's amazing, no matter where you are in the world, as an Australian or a Kiwi, you do get together and remember that they'll by each other's side and continue to be today.
Yeah, as Nathan mentioned, it all started Anzac Day on the 25th of April 1915 when the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps first landed on that beach in Gallipoli. And Anzac Day started as an opportunity to honour those who served on that occasion. It has since morphed into an opportunity for all of us to mark our respect to those who have served in all wars, also in all conflicts and peacekeeping operations as well. Sadly, Pat, this also marks the one-year anniversary since the passing of Damian Drapak, who was a really close personal friend of mine, a guy that I knew from the age of around about 8. He had an infectious love of cycling, and it was on this day last year when he was riding out to a race at Sandown for the Anzac Day Classic with the Carnegie Caulfield Club, where he was tragically killed. So this is a great opportunity for us to also pay our respects for a guy that everybody knew as Duda. And if you're wondering how he got the nickname Duda, it was because he couldn't pronounce his own name when he was a kid. So he called himself Duda instead of Damian. And he was sadly lost at the age of 30. Well, he passed away at the age of 30, but he certainly wasn't lost. His memory lives on. And I know you had the chance to race against him quite a bit, Pat.
Yes, and it is a really sad moment. I mean, we're lucky we've got a race on today to sort of honour that. He was a great man, and he was really at the peak of his life. He had much of his success was in the later days of his life, and I think that's why he stays so fond in our memories. And it was beautiful to represent him early in the year, in January at the Bay Criteriums, where he raced so well the year previous. So certainly it's a great opportunity to remember Damian.
Yeah, he was a guy who had just finished his degree as a doctor, and he was starting out his career in the medical field at the Austin Hospital. The race is now underway. So before we really get stuck into the race, Pat, we're going to mark our respects to both the Anzacs and all those who served in all wars, conflicts, and peacekeeping operations, and also to mark the one-year anniversary of the passing of Dr. Damian Drapak by having 1 minute silence starting now. Thanks to everybody who's served throughout any conflict that both Australia and New Zealand have been represented in. And also we mark our respects once again to Dr. Damian Drapak, who passed away 1 year ago. And Pat, I'm sure that all those who have served, and Damian himself at this point would say, get stuck into the racing. And the race now is underway. 2.6 kilometres having been covered. This is 40.3 kilometres worth of racing. Incredible numbers, Pat, in A grade. 541 riders on the start line.
Yes, certainly. And let's remember that the Aussies are in A grade and the Kiwis in B grade. We've effectively given them Australian colours versus the Kiwi colours. And look, there's some really phenomenal riders on the start list. But I think notably we must say we've got Paddy Bevan from Team CCC, who represents New Zealand today in the B grade classification. So it's great to see one of the World Tour pros. At the moment, we've sort of been starved of some really top racing. So it's great to see him on here. And as far as the Zwift world goes, we've got some really good battles. We've got Ella Harris going up against Jess Pratt, notably the two Zwift Academy winners and both racing for SRAM Canyon in the World Tour. And also in the men's side of things, Nick White and Ollie Jones. Now, they go to head almost on a weekly basis on Zwift. But today it'll be interesting to see whether one of those can take out the win. Obviously, it's not just a race though, Matt. We've also got a ride. So we've got a lot of people turning up from all categories and also abilities. It's great to have everyone taking part. Nearly over 1,000 people. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, the numbers are just huge. And as you mentioned, throughout the coronavirus restrictions, some people are in real lockdown. Others got a little bit more freedom to still get out on the road and ride. It has taken off in a big way, and we've seen the pros racing, we've seen the Tour de Suisse online with Zwift, we've seen the Tour of Flanders as well. Incidentally, overnight it was Nicholas Roach who managed to get the win, stage 3 in the Tour de Suisse, which has been raced on the Zwift platform. Nathan Guerra, who got us all started, he's just had to duck off and get another few bits and pieces happening, as he's been a pretty busy man, as he's had a lot going on throughout the last couple of weeks or so. And he does a brilliant job of hosting so much of the coverage that is here on Zwift. Pat, the two riders that you mentioned there that really caught my interest so far this year have been both Ella Harris and also Jessica Pratt. You and I were both at the Lexus of Blackburn Herald Sun Tour and that stage up to Falls Creek, where Ella Harris, the Kiwi, she was dropped not once, not twice, but 7 times, fought her way back and somehow still managed to win the stage.
Yes, and none other than on the National Day of New Zealand. So it was an emotional victory too. And one of the best interviews we've seen post-race with our friend Dave McKenzie that took that interview with Alice directly after the stage. And it was a fantastic finish, probably one of the best stage finishes we've seen in the Women's Herald Sun Tour. And phenomenally, it was Alanis that nearly hung on, but it's in the last 500 metres, the legs broke. Lucy Kennedy took the stage, but it was Ella Harris that was the star of the day. And you mentioned about Jess Pratt. Well, she was phenomenal at not only Santos Women's Tour Down Under, but also a great ride in Cadell Evans Great Ocean Road Race for the Deakin University Women's edition there too. So phenomenal summer. And something that's quite strange for us, really. Right now, we would be talking about the cobbled classics probably, but fantastically, it's the Australian summer that everyone keeps talking about because it's basically the only racing that's taken part.
Yeah, it is. And amongst them racing, Jimmy Whelan, who rides for EF Education First, who is a guy that is based originally out of Melbourne. He's now living in Europe. He's part of the lockdown. He has entered into this race and he's been racing brilliantly on Zwift from over in Europe. So he is definitely going to be one of the guys to watch today. And it's notable that Jimmy Whelan is on the start list.
Yeah, certainly. He's
another
a great
notable
supporter of Zwift, actually. Sorry.
Yeah, go on, keep going, Pat. No, keep going.
I was just about to say it's popping up on the side of everyone's screen, some of the brackets, some of the teams. And there's a great new formation of some really talented Aussies, in particular, Ben Hill, Nick White. I know Nick Squalari is also part of Team Aero, ACE, and it's got a gap between each of the letters, but AERO. You'll see that popping up a lot today. Now, they're a new team on the Zwift racing platform as far as the riders. And it's Tully Lister, I believe, that's behind that formation. He's been a strong supporter of Australian cycling over the years. And it's fantastic to see that not only are the riders using Zwift as a platform, but now they're also thinking, well, hang on, why not try racing professionally on Zwift as well through the esports component of cycling? So this whole coronavirus situation has really probably put the fast forward button on a lot of these series, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Australian cycling, what's the word of it? Probably the community now sees esports cycling, because now the big names of our National Road Series are taking part also in these races.
And this is Brie Vine, who we're now back with in the green colours. She rides for the Step Forward Suzuki team, and she's a rider who no doubt was looking forward to the National Road Series on the road. Now she can look forward to the National Road Series on Zwift. This has been a fantastic initiative that has really been driven by Wes Salzberger, who works for Zwift. He's one of the main guys in the Australia, New Zealand, the Oceania region for Zwift, that previously rode for Francis de Jeux, rode the Tour de France, rode the World Championships. Incidentally, he's racing here today. He's helped put together this series. It kicks off next weekend. There's 6 days of racing. It's every alternative weekend. So it's on the 2nd of May, 16th of May, 30th of May, then 13 June, 27 June, and 11 July. So 6 rounds of racing in the National Road Series, because the series at the moment has been pushed back to the end of the year. I think this has been a great move by Zwift and the Cycling Australia organisation to get a National Road Series happening online, Pat.
Well, not only that, but it's you talk about Wes Salzberger and Zwift. They've really brought together a great series too. There's going to be individual time trials. There's going to be tough hilly races. There's going to be flat circuits as well. The teams are going to have to be smart about their selections for each of the stages. They don't have to run the same riders in every stage, but the riders have to be predetermined before the series starts. And we have a start list, but we won't give away too much. 17 teams will represent the Men's National Road Series and 7 teams in the Women's. To quickly cover those teams, Oliver's Real Foods Racing, ARA Pro Racing Sunshine Coast, Team Bridge Lane, St. George Continental Cycling Team, Nero GPM Stalls, Inform TM Insight Make, South Australian Institute of Sport, Phoenix Cycling Collective, Butterfield's Insurance Advisement, Van Dam Racing, Subaru Giant Racing Team, Advantageous Pro Racing, Team CCS Canberra, VeloFit Australia, Futuro Pro Cycling, Veris Racing and TRS Racing. They're the 17 teams in the Men's National Road Series, as we see Nick White from Team Aero that I just mentioned earlier, and he's part of Team Bridge Lane in the upcoming National Road Series. And in the Women's Series, we have Team CCS Canberra, Sydney Uni Staminade, Step Forward Suzuki, Rock Solid Attacker that set us all on fire over the professional summer, Subaru Giant Racing Team, Australian Cycling Academy, and South Australian Sports Institute. So we're really looking forward to this, because I think it could even be more entertaining than the actual real-life racing in the NRS.
Well, getting back to the racing that we've got here at the moment, some of the names that we're seeing pop up towards the front. I've just seen the name of Pat Eddy. He's one of the young rising stars of Australian cycling. You can see P. Eddy. He rides for Inform TM Insight Make. He'll be a rider who features heavily in that National Road Series. Australian Under-19 road and time trial champion from last year. But that name that has just popped up on the screen, Pat Shaw, one of your former teammates, Paddy Bevan, the great Kiwi,
yes,
who rides for CCC in the World Tour.
Yeah, he's sticking right up the front, and look, it looks exactly like him. He's got his 5 o'clock shadow. He loves it. I tell you what, can't speak high enough of Paddy Bevan as a teammate when I raced with him. He was a phenomenal contributor to the team, tactically and all on the actual bike. But I was actually going to touch base on another Kiwi, just as you spoke of young Pat Eddy, who's a phenomenal young rider in the Australian scene. Lawrence Pithy was just behind him at the same time, an equally phenomenal and a young rider from New Zealand. So it's fantastic to see all these riders coming in. James Moriarty just popped up on the screen there as well for Oliver's Real Foods. A nice acquisition by the National Road Series team, and a great young rider up and coming. He's phenomenal on the track. I'd love to see what he can really offer on the road once we get back outdoors and racing. But he's going to have a great opportunity in the virtual National Road Series, which we mentioned does come up in just about a week's time. But there's so many great riders in here. Also, so many great female riders as well. We touched on Ella Harris and Jess Pratt. What I wanted to ask you about, Matt, I know from my perspective, being a coach of a lot of young athletes, that there's challenges in this current climate. Without having the racing, now we've obviously got racing on Zwift, but the outdoor racing also has its other challenges, downhills, braking, all that experience. How do you see the next 12 months affecting the first-year pros in the World Tour peloton, and also those pros, the riders, should I say, that are amateurs at the moment, trying to get a contract at the end of this season?
Or the riders that I feel most sorry for are the ones that are perhaps just on the brink of perhaps getting a World Tour contract. And a guy like Nick White, who you're pretty close with, he's in a really difficult position because at his age, this is kind of crunch time. This is a season where he really needs to prove himself. So it can be the difference, missing out on that opportunity to really race, between making it or not making it at this point, unfortunately, for a guy like Nick White. So it's going to be really difficult for somebody like him. In terms of that skill development and so on for some of the younger riders, they'll be fine. They'll be able to catch up. They'll be able to close that gap. I don't think that's going to be a major issue. But there's those riders that are at 23, 24, that it's a really important season for them. They're the ones that could really miss out. And if you look back on a career of a guy like Simon Gerrans, and this weekend is meant to be Liège-Bastogne-Liège, a race that Simon in 2014. He didn't make it into the pro peloton until he was 24. So he's the kind of guy that if he was racing now at 24 years of age, he might have slipped through the cracks. And he went on to have one of the great careers in Australian cycling. So for the ones who are in that age bracket, it's really, really difficult.
Yes, and I agree. It's going to be a challenging time. I mean, both in the men's and women's side of the sport, we saw some really great racing from unlikely characters, should I say, people that we didn't expect over the summer of cycling, and we'd hope that they have the opportunity. But also look at the glass half full side. I think a lot of the time riders are going to the next level too early. And this maybe puts a pause on that by 12 months. And for both the women and men's side of the sport, an extra 12 months of development, we might see that these riders then transition into the World Tour and have an immediate effect rather than just hanging around making up numbers for 12 or 18 months. So it's going to be an interesting one to see play out. I saw Samara Shepherd, a strong supporter of the Zwift platform and also a phenomenal rider in real-life racing as well, notably in the mountain bike scene, but also made her debut on the road in the Lexus of Blackburn Sun Tour earlier in the year, and she did not go unnoticed. A really great ride for her too. Great to see also Lynette Lewis, Lucy McMaster, Mandy McDonald and Mandy Wasman from the AHDRL group that ride on the Hump Day ride for the ladies. So fantastic to see a great turnout from them as well. It's fantastic to see so many women subscribe today, Matt.
It is sensational. This is one of the great things about Zwift is there's more level of comfort to get into it. And I think it's turning out to be a really great gateway into the sport. I heard an interview recently with Michael Woods, the Canadian that rides for EF, Education First, and his wife was a really good middle distance runner, but she's never shown much interest in cycling. They're in lockdown at the moment in Europe. I can't remember whether he's in Girona or Andorra. That he said that his wife has never shown any interest in cycling, but now all of a sudden she is on Zwift. She's starting to understand how watts work, power to weight, etc. She's done an FTP ramp test, and now she's doing some of the training programs that are on Zwift, and she's really getting into it. We're on board now with Jimmy Halfwheel, and that's one of the teammates of Michael Woods. But I've also seen some images from across in Western Australia, and the dual Olympic Games gold medalist from Athens in 2004, Graham Brown, is hunched over the handlebars with his kids watching on from behind, yelling, "Go Dad," as he's trying to keep up with the current world's best. Brownie was one of the world's best. He was a dual Olympic Games gold medalist, rode the Giro d'Italia a number of times. He was a star of the sport, one of the top sprinters at the time. But he's been retired for a few years now, and he was a member of the Drapac team at the end of his career. I love that he's still out there flogging himself, trying to keep up with everyone.
Yeah, he does a lot of meetups on Zwift as well. So he's doing plenty of rides, particularly with his training group as well, because he does coach also. But it's amazing who you do see on the Zwift platform during the week. I mean, I think last weekend I was having a look late in the evening European time, and 26,000 riders were on Zwift at that time. I see Anna Booth out there for... that's for Staminade University of Sydney. That's great to see her out there. Anya Lowe as well from Tasmania. There's some really great riders in here today. Nearly 1,000 subscribed. There's 800 live riders in the group at the moment. And of course, it is a ride, but we do have a race on our hand as well. It's going to be interesting to see who can take that out. Apparently, there's a bit of banter overnight between a couple of riders, notably... One that was quite interesting was I got a message last night, flat out just getting messages about apparently Nick White saying, "I've got this."
It was directly from Nick White saying, "I've got this"?
No, actually, I didn't even ask him because I didn't want to put too much pressure on him until the end of the day. But as I mentioned again, you can see him just up the front. And also Tully Lister, who I mentioned had started that Aero team. But last night, it was actually Marcus Cooley, third place in the National Road Championship in January, Matt Keenan, that said, I popped up a storyboard and he said, "Nick White reckons he's unbeatable. Here, heard it here first." Well, I reckon Marcus Cooley, he's got to be one of the riders that the Zwift platform and virtual cycling really suits. He has a great power to weight ratio, and he has a phenomenal ability to hold and sustain a high level of power.
Yeah, on the topic before that we spoke about in terms of what it means for riders and going to that next level, and you talk about Nick White, a guy like Henk Vogels is tuning in and watching at the moment. He's a sports director at ARA Pro Racing Sunshine Coast. So he'll be watching this pretty closely. He's got a really strong team. He's got the likes of Michael Freeberg in this race. Also, Matt Rice is in this race, a guy who's starting to catch the attention of a few World Tour teams. They've also got Taj Jones, a brilliant sprinter who's catching the attention of a few World Tour teams as well. But I just wonder how much a guy like Henk Vogels is watching this and taking a look at the power numbers that we're able to see and seeing somebody that hasn't emerged just as yet on the National Road Series punching big numbers out on this platform and probably figures, well, there's an untapped talent that nobody knows about yet. Maybe we can have a chat to that guy or woman and put them onto the team.
Oh, certainly, and I've been talking about this for over 24 months now, I reckon, about identifying young talent on the Zwift platform. And what you will see is both women and men, young women and young men, with under 17 and under 15s in brackets next to their name, particularly down in the Tasmanian region. That is where we see a lot of really young riders coming up through Zwift platform. Obviously a smaller group down there, so they don't have as much racing, or at least high-level racing, because of the lack of numbers a lot of the time. But however, on Zwift, they are strong. They are really good. And it's great to see particularly young riders getting on the Zwift platform. Notably, if you have a young child at home that wants to jump on Zwift, you can apply for a free membership for them. So you can do that via Zwift.com and get involved, because I know that there's rides actually for young riders each week. And I'm just trying to remember to myself.
What age does that go up to? Can you remember what age that goes up to, Pat?
I think it's 14 years and under, Matt. I've got to have clarification of that, but it's 14 years under. And a lot of my young locals have been getting involved. So their parents have Zwift, their parents have a trainer, and rather than using their parents' accounts, they can use their own, which gives them a sense of accountability, and also they can see their own progress. They are blocked from replying or seeing, so there is a good privacy side to it as well. So they're protected through that, which has been great to see as well. But so many kids turning up in the shop in the last few weeks and asking more and more information about that. And I think it's Vicky Whitelaw that actually runs a training session for them once a week, which is fantastic. It's 16 and under, I'm told. And it's just been up to 16, should I say, because of the such subscribes that have happened through that. And it's been fantastic. Vicky Whitelaw, who you know really well, she's running training sessions for them as well. And it's an incredible way to grow. And I think this opens up a whole new portal for Zwift, the development of young Australian riders, both women and women and male. And I really love it. I love every bit of that.
Yeah, I do. I like it. And I like it that it's gone up to 16 and under. And I also noted that in this lead group, which is really starting to thin out, Pat, because the speed is on, we're seeing power numbers at 4.5 to 5 watts per kilo regularly towards the front of this group. I just noted Troy Herfoss is near the front. I haven't noticed in the women's section of this race whether his wife, Emily Herfoss, is in the race or not. I didn't quite pick up her name on the start list when I took a look through it last night and this morning. But between the two of them, they spend a lot of time training on Zwift. It's a brilliant platform for the two of those to be able to train together.
Yes, it's certain. And I mean, this is the Anzac ride, but it doesn't just mean that they're only Australians on here. We've got John Mould, ex-Olympian for Rowing King. So he's from Wales. He's jumped in. Must be an early start for him or a late ride. Great to see also Corbin Strong, one of the up-and-coming riders in Australia and New Zealand, a New Zealand rider. But he rides for Seg Racing in the professional palette, and it's great to see all these riders. Connor Murtaugh in there for Oliver's Real Foods, Jack Sykes as well. Fantastic to see them. As I mentioned before, for the Canyon professional team on Zwift, Ollie Jones representing them today. There's just so many riders in there. To give you a little bit of an update on the team, Team Arrow that I mentioned earlier, that's new to the professional side. Well, they're looking to race in the professional side. Zwift is Ben Hill, Brad Norton, Cameron Roberts, James Ogilvie, Marcus Cooley, who's part of that team, obviously giving me the heads up that Nick White was going to be one to watch today. Nick Squalari, Jay Vine, another brilliant rider who had a phenomenal performance early in the year at the Tour, the Sun Tour, should I say. And also Rhiannon Norton, partner of Brad Norton. She's their lone female compatriot at this point, but I'm sure that they'll pick up more riders along the way, and it's great to see that side of it growing.
Yeah, it is. You spoke about people in different parts of the world being able to do this ride and what time it might be. I've been lucky enough for the last 4 Sundays, I think it is now. I've been doing a Kiwi ride effectively, which is 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning that it kicks off in Australia. It's 9 a.m. New Zealand time, and it's organised by Greg Henderson. So it's a Coach Hendy ride. And in addition to predominantly being New Zealanders who are on the ride, Ella Harris has been on it for the last couple of weeks. And whilst I'm gasping for oxygen going up any climb, she's still sending messages on the Zwift companion telling everybody how easy it is. There's been people that Greg has invited from all over the world, and Kunda Court's been doing the ride a couple of times at 1 a.m. in the morning in Andorra. It has been absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and speaking about groups, when the shutdown of the racing happened, particularly at a club level, I was really concerned that we would lose club members. And so I got in touch with the club and said, why don't we start picking some races on the Zwift Events Weekly calendar that our club members can all sign up for. And they went on to Zwift Power. So I'll explain Zwift Power. If you're going to race on Zwift, you should go to Zwift Power, sign up. It's a results page as well as an events page, so you can see who's going to be racing. You can also see the results. Maybe there's someone that's beaten you. You can see their average heart rate, their average power, and all that data is also displayed there. You need to then go to Zwift.com and link your Zwift Power account with your Zwift account. And then that makes you viable for all races on Zwift. It'll be part of the results system. And for people doing the ride today, if they go to Zwift Power at the end of the day, they can see their performance. They can see how they went. So if you're not on Zwift Power and you want to continue to race on Zwift, it's definitely a must go. All of the National Road Series riders that will participate in the series in next week and the following 7 weeks, they will need to be also part of Zwift Power. Otherwise, their results will not show up and they will not be part of the series. So that's an important part. But getting back to my point, we had nobody in part of the Ballarat Sebastopol Cycling Club group. We now have 51 subscribers in that group, and that's just our club alone. There's plenty of clubs doing it. We race on a Wednesday morning, as we would normally in real life, and it's been fantastic. The club members have loved it. We've even got sponsors locally of the series so that they get vouchers, etc. So it's kept that camaraderie there. A little banter back and forth, of course. We expect that. It's sport. But also it's been great to see the club still spending time together.
Yeah, it is awesome. And it's the banter has been fantastic in a lot of these formats. A group of guys that I normally ride with on a Saturday morning, they're doing a ride this morning, which started at 7:30. And as part of that, in addition to being able to message each other via the Zwift companion, every now and then they set up a Zoom. So you're doing Zwift and Zoom at the same time. So they're actually talking to each other as if you're riding alongside each other when you're actually out on a bike ride. Back to your comments before, Pat, about power, as we're seeing a little bit of pressure being put on at the front by one of the Kiwis. This is Nolan, who's just slipping off the front at a lazy 5 watts per kilo, if you don't mind, Pat. One of the great things that I've found about Zwift is the reality check that you get. When you go back and you take a look at the power numbers by Greg Van Avermaet to win the virtual Tour of Flanders, and then I go back and I take a look at the ride that put me in the hurt locker for the next week on Zwift, and you see that Greg has averaged 450 watts for around about an hour or so, and I go back and I look at mine, I'm just touching a little bit over 200. It really puts you back in your seat and you realise the gap between elite and commentator.
Yes, and equals, Matt, so that people don't get too concerned. It's always important to look at the watts per kilo for a start. And secondly, the other stat to look at is how much of your threshold have you held? Because in that race that Greg Van Avermaet performed so well, you would see that is a byproduct of his actual FTP. So important you stick equally against the others in the field. I find this with my father a lot. Nearly 60 years of age. Nearly 70 years of age. He is consistently saying, "Oh, look, I can't do this big watts." And I said, "Yes, but as he's calling me now to ask me more about that," and I asked him to look at his power. I look at his power and then we work out how he measures up against other people. So 400 watts for, say, Greg Van Avermaet may actually represent 220 for you, Matt Keenan, compared to your actual power output on the training platform.
Well, you grab the phone, Pat, and I'll take a look at who's racing up towards the front of the peloton here. Jay Vine from the Aero Racing team. He's a guy who really loves this platform. M. Viviani. It'd be nice if that was Elio Viviani, but Viviani with the Italian flag next to his name, riding strongly towards the front. Z. Gilmore, that's Zach Gilmore. P. Bevan down towards the back in the black colours, the Kiwi, Paddy Bevan. Good to see Graham Frisley up towards the front, a member of the Brunswick Cycling Club, which is the club that Damian Drapak was always a member of. And Michael Drapak, the entire Drapak family, have always been great supporters of that club. Ben Hill up towards the front. Troy Herfoss is still there as well. Still plenty of black jerseys in there. The Kiwis are well represented. Less riders on the start line for New Zealand by comparison to Australia. That's not surprising given the difference in the size of population between the two countries. And if you have just joined us, this is the Anzac Classic, as we pay our respects to all the servicemen and women from the Australian and New Zealand armed forces who have served in both wartime, peacekeeping missions and conflicts throughout the world, to give us the quality of life that we now have and we very much appreciate. This front group is starting to dwindle down. Incredibly, almost 100 subscribers onto the start line today. Just a smidgen over or under 800 by the time the race got underway. Absolutely incredible numbers fronting up for this ride. Jimmy Half-Wheeler,
Yes.
he's towards the front, riding for the EF Education First Team. Troy Herfoss is there. He's holding well, Pat. Did you get your dad sorted out with that phone call?
Yeah, he's just calling me saying that, wow, what are the numbers in this front group? No, but seriously, there's probably someone asking me later on if I can fix their puncher. It is select, but if you go through the list, I tell you what, there's some really quality here, and it's going to be fantastic to see how this plays out towards the end. We've spoken about teams on Zwift versus teams in real life, so obviously, with example, I'll use Nick White, who rides for Team Bridge Lane in real life racing here with Team Arrow. Then you've got Jay Vine. He normally rides for Nero Continental, but here he races for Arrow. Marcus Cooley racing for Arrow, normally races in the Pro Asian Classic level. So this thing little collusion, maybe you could call it, Matt Keenan, as teams come on here that represent other teams in real life, almost like an Olympic Games in a lot of respects, that countrymen will come together and countrywomen will come together to race together in a world title or Olympics. But when they race in the real life racing outdoors, they're racing for their trade team. So here we've got two trade teams. We've got trade team virtual and trade team real life.
It was causing a little bit of confusion for me with the different teams in those brackets to what I'm accustomed to seeing some of these riders ride for. So I'm glad that you made that explanation. The green colours, the Australian riders, the black colours, the Kiwi riders, and still strongly in this group is Paddy Bevan. And for a guy like Paddy Bevan, Pat, the Australian National Road Series, that was a really important stepping stone for Paddy Bevan to move up to what is now the World Tour and then to make his first appearance at the Tour de France. And as of next weekend, the 2nd of May, we get the Zwift National Road Series started, which is a 6-race series running every second weekend from the 2nd of May through to the 11th of July. And I'm sure that Paddy Bevan would appreciate the fact that this series is being put on in the face of racing being shut down because of the coronavirus.
Oh, I can tell you that from both sides of the men's and women's National Road Series, teams and riders are absolutely chomping at the bit to get started. They're missing racing, but also an important byproduct of that is too. And I think this is probably one of the important ones. Is it's important that once we start racing outdoors again, that the followers of the National Road Series don't forget riders, the characters, the teams, their sponsors, etc. And this gives a really great outlet for that to happen. And so I've been a strong supporter of the riders from the National Road Series participating on Zwift for a long time, because they meet a lot of people that want to ride with them but probably don't have the capability physically. I mean, if we're to jump on Zwift, Matt Keenan, we can ride with guys from the World Tour or even from the National Road Series. And I've always, the riders from the National Road Series, men and women, are incredibly approachable. They're very friendly, and it's good to get out and do rides together with them. The Hump Day ride on a Wednesday evening has always been a good proof of that. But as we see today, they're out there riding. They've got 1,000 subscribers on today's ride, but there's probably only 150 of those that are National Road Series. So that means we've got 850 riders out there of a recreational level, and we can see that through the age categories on Zwift Power. So I remind people, do go to Zwift Power and sign up on Zwift Power. It'll allow you to meet other people that you're of similar ability to, and that's a great thing too. You touch base about Graham Brown, for example, an ex-Olympian on racing as well. Glenn O'Shea, just been appointed a Cycling Australia coach on the track team. So he's out there as well today, and touching base on some of the ladies that are out there, particularly for the ladies Hump Day ride. Lucy McMaster, should I say, out there, Fiona Denham. And these are common names that you'll come across if you go on the Aussie Hump Day ladies ride.
You mentioned, Pat, the opportunity to ride with some of the stars of the National Road Series and even some of the absolute elite. When it comes to those sorts of rides, my favourite rides are the no-drop rides. And I'd like that slingshot effect to come into the real world at some stage. That'd be nice.
Yeah, certainly. And if you're having trouble with the audio on the Facebook feed, do go over to the Zwift community live tube. There's having great reception over there. So if you're having trouble on the Facebook link, then find yourself over to YouTube. That is quite clear. Yes, the no drop rides are my favourite too, Matt. Unfortunately, the days of me pushing power above 250 watts are pretty much behind me. But I certainly do enjoy getting out there and riding with others, and they enjoy it too. We have a great position here locally to be able to see that. Dealing with our bike shop, we see people of all levels and disciplines as well. Also being involved in the National Road Series as a rider in the past, so I get to deal with the National Road Series riders. And you speak of Paddy Bevan, Ella Harris, Jess Pratt. These are World Tour pros, and to speak to them as well about how they use the platform, and also have our own customers, local riders. They don't race. They just go out on maybe their 8-speed old road bike, but they get on Zwift and they ride with Jack Haig. They ride with Amanda Spratt. And it's just that sense of like spending some time with these idols. It's a phenomenal thing, really. It's hard to believe because both yourself and I, when we first started racing, never would this have even been in the forefront of our mind, let alone think it was a possibility. And now you can do training rides with Mitchelton Scott. Trek Segafredo, as you said, have been a major supporter of the Zwift platform during this downtime. Team CCC, it is really a phenomenal possibility for people that, when have you been able to go for a hit of cricket with Adam Gilchrist? You can't. But certainly you can go and ride with Michael Freeberg, ex-Australian, who's on the screen. You can go for a ride with Jack Haig. You can go for a ride with, as I said, Spratt, Ella Harris, Jess Pratt. These are the upcoming riders in the women's peloton. And that, for me, is something that is exclusive to cycling.
Yeah, it is. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And at the moment, in this group, C Strong is sitting down near the back. And I've just had a message from Coach Hendy. Greg Henderson is tuning in. He's obviously watching with a very strong Kiwi perspective, looking for the riders in the black colours. Corbin Strong is just 19 years of age. And earlier on this year, he managed to pick up the gold medal in the points race at the World Championships. So the Kiwis, they don't have as many numbers as the Aussies, but they have Paddy Bevan and they have Corbin Strong still sitting patiently in this group. They're really well positioned to potentially win the race, Pat.
Oh, certainly. They've also got Lawrence Pithy in there as well, another fantastic young rider. I think that this has been a great way to find these riders as well. Normally in these younger categories, particularly under 19s, we know about riders if you're in industry, as we say. So if you are in the development of riders in cycling, but also through a platform like Zwift, we see these riders have under 19s or under 17s in brackets next to their name. And it makes you think to yourself, as you said before, Matt Keenan, it's interesting to look at Greg Van Avermaet's statistics. But when you enter a race on Zwift and there's some 16-year-old really handing it to you, back like the olden days in the club racing, you'd have your senior rider and then some young buck would come along and take fastest time in the local handicap, and they'd be like, what's this all about? That's how you were found back then. But now you can be found internationally, which is just phenomenal.
Yeah, tactically, the race has got around about 7 kilometres to go. Steve Castle, who is watching online, he's made a pretty good comment on the Facebook feed saying that taking a look at this course, he thinks that the main players won't hit the go button until they hit the climb. And I think that Steve might be onto something there, Pat.
Oh, certainly. It's a tough finish on today's race ride. And yes, Steve Castle's comment coming on, and I agree with him. However, don't think of pure climbers, because on the virtual platform, particularly because this climb isn't super long as well, you've got like we just saw pop up moments ago, Jay. He's going to be one to really watch because he is a climber. But there's other riders on here as well that know the platform really well. Nick White rides on here quite a lot. We know that Zach Johnston, he rides on here a heap. We've got Liam White on there as well. He uses it. I've got these guys on here all the time. Pat Eddy, he's on there a lot too. We've got Tom Benton in there. These are all National Road Series riders. Alistair Donahue. Guymer from Western Australia. All these riders are capable of producing a really good 5-6 minute power output, and that makes it difficult for the climbers to really make an effect, particularly also because you've got a drag effect even on the climbs. Yes, it's less, but it still helps. Tim Cutler, not a name known in the racing in real life, but certainly phenomenal on the virtual platform. So there's a lot of players here. I know that Paddy Bevan would have to be on paper along with Jimmy Whelan, your favourites, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're around the 5th or 6th position.
Well, might hold you to that in around about 6 kilometres time. You spoke about people riding this platform regularly. What about you? Do you ride it very often?
Not as often as I'd like, but we've spoken about, actually, Wes Sulzberger. You spoke about him earlier. I saw Michael Sulzberger, or Moose, on earlier, and Linda, Wes's mother. So it's really a family affair. My father rides 5 days a week, 5 nights a week on Zwift, and uses Saturday, Sunday as his outdoor riding. So they're using that platform a lot. My son wants to get on. He's only 9 years old. But I don't ride as much as I would have liked recently, just because of the business of the bike trade, actually. But looking forward to getting out this afternoon with the kids and taking them for a ride for sure. Luke Cridlin in there as well. Matt Keenan, one of the riders that's been racing since I raced him in under 11s, funnily enough. So it's good to see Luke and his father out there as well having a race today, and both in front group, maybe a family affair, 1-2 at the end. They've been very strong finishers. Jeff Hill, he's up there as well for Vision Racing. He's done a great job racing around. I think that's Brad Soden over there as well. Did a pretty cool Twitter coronavirus tour online earlier in the year. That was pretty cool to watch. There's some really strong riders here. It's going to play out pretty hard. They'll start attacking soon, still only around that sort of 4 watts per kilo at the moment. We will see that push up over 5 in the next few kilometres.
They are still motoring along, doing 45 kilometres per hour. I'm proud to say, Pat, that since I got back from Paris-Nice, I was in home isolation for 14 days, so I couldn't leave my property for 14 days, so riding outdoors was not an option. I started to build up a little bit of momentum on Zwift as a result of that, and I have not missed a day on Zwift since the 23rd of March. So I've gone a month straight where I've ridden every single day on Zwift. And it might only be an hour a day. My longest ride is I do 90 minutes on a Sunday with Greg Henderson and his group that he has organised. I've been absolutely loving it.
Yeah, it probably got you through. I know when you landed, I sent you a message. I said all the best, because I knew that it was going to be a strenuous time. But you looked like you were living the dream. You had service, you had coffee coming to your room. I think you had it pretty easy, actually.
Yeah, the coffee coming to the room, courtesy of my wife, lasted 48 hours, perhaps, maybe at the very best. Graham Brown has made a prediction. He thinks that Guy Kalmer, who's just popped up onto the screen, will be the first to attack. This is coming from a guy who's won 2 Olympic Games gold medals. Let's find out if Graham Brown is right. Troy Herfoss sitting down towards the back of the group.
Yeah, well, Guy was always an aggressive rider when he raced in the National Road Series as well. Remember, his biggest win in the National Road Series, he actually won the Tour de Perth many years ago, probably about 2013, if my mind reminds me correctly. And funnily enough, Rottnest Island was part of that tour. They're now using that as a isolation island at the moment. So the Quokkas have got some more friends over there. I was going to a little bit of a question out to people that are viewing, Matt. Do you have Zwift at home? And if you do, why not post a picture of your Zwift setup? I know yours is pretty good. Ours in store's nice. Mine at home, it's kind of one of those ones that gets put in, I ride, and then I pack it up. Because my daughter in particular loves the space in the office area. She likes that during the day. So if you've got pictures of your Zwift setup, post them online. We always love to see how you are using your virtual setup at home.
Well, Steve Castle was right on the money. He said that the big favourites would save their biscuits until they hit the climb. We're onto the climb now to 3% gradient, and one of the pre-race favourites, the Kiwi in the black colours, is punching out 6.5 watts per kilo. How long can he hold on, Pat? Sure, this is impressive.
Well, depending on his form line at the moment, this is really bread and butter stuff for Paddy Bevan. The way that he can produce power, you've got to remember he's an incredible time trialist as well. He's had some impressive results in the World Tour, but on the Zwift platform and in this situation, particularly because we're not quite going uphill so much at the moment, the peloton has a great advantage over a solo rider.
And they have closed in on him. They've almost made contact with Paddy Bevan. But he's not the kind of rider to back off too easily. Rowan Diva is bridging the gap, Oliver's Real Food Racing, and he manages to get into the slipstream. But that bit of pressure that was put on by Paddy Bevan has significantly reduced the group. James Half-Whelan, Jimmy Whelan is still in this group. Paddy Bevan slips back down towards the back of the peloton. Nick White is still there. So too is Graham Frisley, the young rider from Brunswick, the club that was the club of Damian Drapak, who sadly passed away 1 year ago.
Yes, and there's some significant riders in here as well. Michael Freeberg, Troy Herfoss, Tully Lister still there, Tim Cutler, Dalton Stratton, under 19 from Tasmania, young player in the National Road Series, looking forward to his opportunities in the next 6 or 8 months. Taj Jones was there too, stage winner at the Tour de Langkawi early in the year. Liam and Nick White both still in there also. So it's a very strong group. Dylan Hopkins there as well. And a good time to remind people of power-ups, Matt. Power-ups are crucial towards the end of this race. We'll see the thumbs coming down. That's the ride-on, so the riders can collect them along the day. But the power-ups are really crucial to the finish. Probably the power-up you want today is the feather. If you get the feather power-up, then you will be able to be lighter for about 15 seconds of time, and that gives you an ability to ride away. That would be really advantageous for someone like Paddy Bevan if he's going to attack. You also have the truck or the van, which is a drafting power-up, so that'll allow you to be in the draft position even if you are off the front solo. But my favourite power-up, the Arrow power-up. Looks like an Arrow time trial helmet, and it gives you a power boost on top of your watts that you produce. And I used to use that tactically in the Zwift racing in the old Zwift Crit series that we had, the E-Crit series, much just before I retired. And you would use that Arrow power-up as you launched your attack. It would give you a great advantage over the rest of the field. So watch out for the power-ups towards the end because they will be a big advantage for the riders.
This is, I think, Nick Wood now coming to the front for New Zealand. And I like this post from Wanda Archer. Hi, my name is Wanda, and I'm a Zwiftaholic. And that is exactly how I've felt over the last little period. Now we've got another move going off the front. And we're starting to see a few of those power-ups.
Yes, and they're using them because now's the time. Selection, look at these attacks. Corbin Strong from Seg Racing. We spoke about him earlier. He is an incredible talent. He's putting the pressure on. Lawrence Pithy, he's doing it as well. A young rider. I spoke about him. I really enjoy watching these young Kiwis. They're fantastic. And another big attack over the top. There are riders attacking everywhere. 600 watts. Corbin Strong, 9.6 watts per kilo. Try that on for size, Matt Keenan.
And that is the guy who Greg Henderson told us about. He's the current world champion in the points race on the track. Henderson sent a message around about 15 minutes ago. Keep your eye on Corbin Strong. And he was spot on. Impressive.
Yes, and we're seeing Rima on the camera there, on the Ver. We're going to see the replay of the finish in a moment, Matt Keenan. We'll get a slow motion replay so we can see the results pop up as well as the finish. Big thumbs up for Pithy. That was a big sprint towards the end there, and Corbin Strong as well. We'll wait to see what the replay, the slow motion replay, will show us the finish coming up, and we'll see where the win was taken. We're watching Wood, which gives us a little bit of a look. It is Pithy that was in front. Corbin Strong would let it out, but it was Pithy that came over the top. He was too strong, no pun intended, for Corbin. And it looks like Ben Hill came to the line quite quickly, possibly for third with Cam Roberts in fourth, but we'll get a result sheet up soon. Team Arrow really filled that top 10, but they couldn't get the job done. Lawrence Pithy for New Zealand takes the cake.
So the Kiwis, we spoke about the fact that the Aussies had the superior numbers in terms of starters, but the New Zealanders had the superior horsepower and they got the timing right. The Kiwis featuring heavily with the likes of Corbin Strong and also Paddy Bevan as they were making their way up the climb. But then Pithy getting the timing right. And Pat, you spoke about it as they approached the climb and using the power-ups. Timing is so important when you're racing on Zwift, on where you use your horsepower.
Oh, and also the draft. I mean, the draft is still there, effectively the same as in real life racing. If you get in the draft and use almost a slingshot effectively, like in NASCAR, I suppose, you can actually get a double boost in that. So if you can get in the slipstream and then punch your power up, particularly the Arrow, you've got an incredible advantage over the rest. I did see Aiken in there actually, and I'm not quite sure who that is at this point. No disrespect, because he finished in the top three guaranteed. May have even taken the win for Australia. So I might have gone a little early on Pithy, but we'll wait for those results to pop up shortly. Fantastic to see so many riders in today's ride. And there's a lot of riders that'll still be riding now. Obviously, this is the front group, but 1,000 subscribers just shows the strength that there is in the Australia and New Zealand area for the Zwift platform.
And that's the more important thing about today's event than the actual win and who got across the finish line first. And we will wait for confirmation on those results. But the fact that there were such big numbers, almost 1,000 people participating, as we mark our respects to all the men and women who have served both Australia and New Zealand. It started on the 25th of April 1915 in Gallipoli, when the Anzacs first landed there and their participation in the First World War. But this day now is an opportunity for all of us to pay our respects to everybody who has served both of our countries in war, conflict, and in peacekeeping missions as well. But Pat, this is also an opportunity for us to look forward as we anticipate the start of the National Road Series on Zwift, and it all kicks off next weekend on the 2nd of May. The women starting at 9 o'clock, the men starting at 10 o'clock. And I can't wait for the National Road Series online. You and I are going to get to call this series together.
Yes, 17 teams in the Men's National Road Series and 7 teams in the Women's National Road Series. Many of those riders were racing today. It's a little bit of an appetizer for us before it all kicks off on the 2nd of May. Really looking forward to it. Love the structure of it. Love that there's an individual time trial in there as well, which is going to be interesting. Maybe we'll see a return of Joseph Cooper. Who knows? I mean, a phenomenal rider we both enjoyed watching and riding with. Some of the victories that he pulled out over the years were phenomenal. So maybe Joseph Cooper. Maybe we'll see a surprise visit by Paddy Bevan for the time trial, but unlikely back in the National Road Series. Fantastic racing today and riding. And Matt, the biggest thing that I think we'll see out of this National Road Series on the virtual side is maybe it gives these riders that aren't racing outdoors still the exposure to the World Tour teams that they really, truly deserve.
Well, it's worth noting a few of the people that I got messages from that are paying attention to who's doing what and who's able to put out the big power. We've had Greg Henderson watching from New Zealand, one of the leading coaches in the world, former great lead-out man for Andre Greipel. You've got Henk Vogels, who is watching, and he's not just going to be watching over the next few weeks. He's one of the sports directors at the ARA Pro Racing Sunshine Coast team. So he's trying to win the series, but no doubt he'll be looking a little bit further back in the results sheet to one of the lesser known riders, a younger rider that perhaps is somebody for him to recruit. So there's going to be a lot of people paying attention. And one of the great advantages is they can watch from home and pay attention from there. They don't have to travel across the countryside to be able to work out who's doing what in the National Road Series.
Yeah, certainly. And I think this is a good launch pad into the Zwift Academy as well, which will happen each and every year, which gives them the ability to go and race in the Pro Continental and also World Tour levels in the men's and women's racing scene. If you're looking for the results, there is a little bit of a glitch for us on that front at this moment. We're waiting for them to come through. You can always go to Zwift Power and check your results. We spoke about it and touched base on that during the event today. Go to Zwift Power, sign up. You don't have to worry too much about your information being out. Join up on Zwift.com and link the two of Zwift Power and Zwift together. So then when you race, that'll all be collated. It's kind of like the Strava, but of your results. So it's really good like that. So every race that you've participated in your Zwift career, let's call it, you will have those results listed. You also gain points along the way as well, determined by the difficulty of the event that you participate in, but also your results will be saved in your file. Remember, a heart rate monitor is imperative to give confirmation of your result. And so that will also be part of it. So make sure you've got a heart rate monitor that's working and linked up to your Zwift platform when you race.
Well, Pat, for the official results, as you mentioned, that's where to go to take a look at it. Plenty of people on the ride today, including Osher Ginsberg. He was out there on the ride today, not handing out any roses, just handing out lactic acid as he was trying to get through to the finish line. Wes Salzberger was paying plenty of attention, a guy who won a silver medal at the World Championships in the 23s for Australia a number of years ago. It's been a brilliant day of racing. Let's now head back to Nathan Guerra, who is pretty much the headquarters for Zwift Racing. Nathan, back to you.
Hey everybody, thank you so much to Pat and Matt. That was an awesome race for the Anzac Classic. And again, for results, everybody, head on over to Zwift Power for those, zwiftpower.com. They will be populating within the next half an hour. We just couldn't grab them live for you out there today. Again, we are going to be here then next week, Friday for me, Saturday for you guys here, 6 p.m. Friday night here in the U.S., but over in Australia, obviously, for the NRS series. I believe it's a 9 a.m. start, men and women's racing. It's going to be absolutely awesome. We'll be back with Matt and Pat on that for commentary. And you also ever want to check out anything on Zwift Community Live, go ahead and hit that follow button over on all the platforms you're live on now. And we do release our schedule for all of our racing and ride schedules every Monday, so make sure to watch out for that. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. As always, great job to all the riders. Great job to everybody who had shown up for this great Anzac Classic. It was a great time to have everybody out there. And we'll catch you guys out on Zwift. As always, everybody, ride on.